our master class. Today, I'm going to share my screen here. I'm here with Trish. Good afternoon, Trish.
Yes, good afternoon, Bry.
Make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. Nope, wrong one. Hopefully you can see that. We'll start off with the syllabus here. And working our way through here. We're in the fourth quarter right now. What we've been spending our time is working with buyers right now. Our last call, we went over the ultimate buyer presentation where we walked you through really educating the buyer and giving them enough information about yourself as to why they should sign with you, right? Why should I use you out of all the realtors there? And as you know, since the settlement, it is now required to have an agreement signed in writing before you even do anything on that buyer's behalf, including scheduling a property. And I had an agent ask me the other day, Trish, well, what if I just meet them at the property and I have them sign it there? Technically, I would prefer them to do that just to get it signed, but it really started when they actually booked the showing because they're acting on behalf of that prospect in a real estate capacity. They should have an agreement signed. And those are things that we're starting to see now, audits that are coming through with regards to making sure the agreements are signed timely. So we went through best practices, some of the different tasks that you could explain. Why would a buyer need an agent and what sets you apart, right? And I think I failed to say it last week, and I was thinking about it, is why would someone choose you? What if someone was to ask you, Trish, why should I choose you out of all the realtors are out there? Why should I choose you to work with and sign an agreement, committing to work with you? What would be your natural response? I'm doing a little role playing here.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I would do it after I do the buyer presentation. We have a great buyer presentation that shows our value as an agent to the client.
I don't want to see a buyer presentation though. I just want to go and see the house. Why do I have to sign a piece of paper and why should I see you? I think this is, I'm trying to fix my hair here. I'm trying to frame it in a way that it's a challenge that a lot of realtors don't know how to answer this question. They get, discombobulated and they fumble up here, and I'm buying a little bit more time as I see people registering here. But it's a fair question to ask. I'm just curious what your natural response would be. Trish, why should I use you to buy a home?
I mean, I would say personally that I would be representing you and your best interest. If we walk in there, I actually owe my fiduciary duties to the seller and not to you. So signing an agreement, it's me representing that buyer for the entire transaction and only the buyer.
I was watching a clip as I was scrolling through on social media, and this guy was asking multiple people, and their answers all sounded very similar to yours. And what happens is you start to sound like everyone else. And I remember our good friend Danny Griffin, right, from Cape Cod. I remember when he came, he spoke here years ago before this was even a thing. Is whenever a seller or a buyer asks you that question out of the blue, Trish, why should I go with you? And your first natural response should be, because I have a plan. I have a plan to help you get the home of your dreams. Okay. And I'd like to sit down with you for a few minutes, 15 minutes of your time to go through and show you what that plan is. And after that, you can decide whether I'm a good fit for you. And to be quite honest, once I observe your needs, I'm going to be honest if I could even help you. Right. So now it's kind of putting out an even playing field. It's like they're asking you a question as, why should I work with you? I have a plan. Right. That's a little bit more different than, well, because I could do this, can do that. Like we start to go into sell mode right then and there. So I thought that was a great tip just to kind of build that bridge to an appointment to meet with them. And then we could sell them on the appointment. And that's what we've been talking about on these calls. But pro tip I can give you that I gotten is I have a plan. And then also asking them, like, I don't even know if I want to work with you. You might not be, I might not be able to help you, right? So I need to learn more about you before I go scheduling things or doing things and even trying to get you to sign an agreement. So when can we get together for 15 minutes at my office or at Starbucks to go through? I'll review my plan and learn more about you. And we talked about, those appointments and how they should go, getting the buyer profile sheet filled out so you can learn more about them. And that kind of helps push the conversation to the presentation and hopefully ends up with a buyer agreement signed and you can go show them properties, right? But I figured that I would start out with that since we are talking about buyers. Today, we're going to talk about, where are we? October 8th already. I can't believe how quickly the year's gone.
I know.
Buyer negotiations and writing winning offers. So what are the key elements? This is a list. I know, Trish, part of our plan, right? This is a plan that we incorporated a few years ago when it got competitive, and we started working through it. And we're going to work through a worksheet that we've been going over with agents and they've been using with their clients. But I also want to add some little additional conversation, if you will, about what we can do differently to help our clients get secure houses, because in our market, we're in upstate New York, and I'm mindful of that because I know we have agents from different markets where they're starting to see more inventory. But our market in upstate New York, the inventory is still relatively low. So we'll talk about that a little bit here, and I'll pull up GCAR stats. But anything high level before we get into the details, Trish, on what I said about having a plan and what we're going to talk about today as far as how to set yourself apart and demonstrate to a buyer that you have a plan to help them win negotiation, because a lot of buyers are frustrated out there right now.
Yeah. I think just having to do with what you said with having a plan and just setting the expectations up with them in the beginning, I think that's key. And then just one more thing, just for housekeeping purposes, we do have a Facebook, a private group where I upload the recordings after the call. So I know some of you have been emailing me for the recordings if you can't make it. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get all the recordings and the documents into this group so it's in one spot where people can access it. If you're wondering what the group is, I can pull it up towards the end of the call, or I can email you, but please feel free to check out the group page first for the recordings and the documents. I try to do it by end of day every other Wednesday.
All right, awesome. And we're starting to get more people on that page, which is good. So I'm going to just go start with our notes, Trish. We'll go from there because I know we have some small notes to go through. Then we're going to pull up examples of what we're talking about in the notes and elaborate on the conversation a little bit here. Let me see if I can get my slides up here, and then I'll try to share my screen. Trying to think what's the best one. Hold on a second here, Trish. Technical. Going 3 screens here. Anytime we get in PowerPoint here, it's always fun.
I can't believe we're already though in the 5th module, buyer prospecting. It's crazy. We're almost done for the year with the master class. So we will definitely be revamping some of the classes. I know I've had a couple of people already reach out to me about it. We'll be revamping some and adding some new information to the topics that we will be redoing next year, but definitely stay tuned for that. We'll have that out sooner rather than later.
Trish, are you seeing the worksheet here, or are you just seeing our
Yep,
pictures?
I'm seeing the worksheet. Yep, that's perfect.
All right, so why don't you take number 1 since you've been so patient here?
Sure. The best time to get a buyer to sign a buyer agency agreement is immediately following the VIP buyer presentation. I know we always talk about cost is only issue in the absence of value. So taking them through our plan or our process through the buyer presentation, it shows how we're going to help them, what we're going to do. And then it kind of segues into that. But when you're providing that value, people are less likely to, I would say, give you a hard time when signing a document after it.
Yeah, in our last call, if you go back and watch the recording, we spent a lot of time sharing that information in that presentation. Also, we reviewed a list of 25 different tasks that a buyer agent does that people aren't even considering. Buyers aren't even considering that, right? So going through that list, showing your value, it's going to make people rethink all the steps it takes to buy a house. So a lot of times they'll say, well, what do I need a realtor for, right? So that was a good review of why and educating them why. So here's some objections you might get from a buyer, because I think that's the challenge that agents have right now, is explaining buyer agency agreements to them and getting them to sign. They're afraid of some of the objections they might have, right? So number 1, I want my attorney to review this before I sign, right? I don't want to pay an agent if I decide on a for sale by owner, okay? And then I don't want to be in a contract for 6 months or 1 year, right? Now that you have the buyer that you are actively working with, how do you set yourself apart in a competitive market? So you have to explain all these situations and be able to role play. Just like I asked you that question, Trish, you know, why should I use you? You should expect these types of objections and how to respond. And I think once they have an understanding of the process and how it works, then you should demonstrate that in your presentations and the reasons that you're going to set yourself apart from, or not the reasons, the 25 different tasks that we went over in that list. These are items that will show the buyer that are important. You're going to need someone to guide you through this process. And here's the things that we'll be able to do for you. Right. So things like coordinating, you with an attorney, with a lender, with a home inspector, walking through some of the issues, renegotiating if you have to, facilitating, not only just negotiating like we're going to talk about today, to make sure that you win the deal, but also facilitating and guiding you through the whole process, all the way through closing. We walk through that whole roadmap for the buyer. So that is on page 1. Why don't you take the next page here?
Yeah, and Brian, I just wanted to add on to that too. We did, I know you and Willie talked about in the first module too, our buyer checklist.
Yes.
That we as the agents use once we get a buyer under contract, it takes you up through the pending to closing process. And I think that's always a great one to show at the presentation when you're meeting with the buyer firsthand, because you're showing them all of the activities you're going to do on the back end for them that they don't even know. And
that's exactly what I was referring to, Trish, when I said,
oh, gotcha. Yep.
When you're asking that question, why should I use you? I have a plan, and you could demonstrate by showing that checklist, right? This is my plan. So when I work with a buyer, we get a property, this is what we do, A, B, C, all the way through Z, right? That's your plan. And I think if you have the ability to not only say that, but then back it up with an actual tool that illustrates that you have a plan, that's going to set you apart.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's going to help with the conversion of getting that signature on that agreement. All right, you want to take from there, Trish? Go ahead.
Sure. So we recommend 8 steps to help negotiate your buyer's offer in today's market. I know we do have a couple of samples we're going to show afterwards, but number 1 is to call the listing agent to find out what is important to the seller. So a lot of times when you're showing a property, we like to call if you're looking to put in an offer, we like to call the listing agent to see what is the seller looking for? Are they looking for flexibility with closing? Are they looking for maybe inspections to increase the threshold? Is it a local lender? So whatever is important to the seller, it's always very important to speak to that listing agent so that you can incorporate that into your offer.
Yeah, the first step of in order to deal, so to speak, or to write a winning offer is to find out what's important to that seller.
Right.
A lot of agents don't even take the time to call and have a simple conversation about, hey, we'll role play this too. Introducing yourself, trying to make nice, play nice in this playground, right? A lot of people are standoffish in this business, especially newer agents. If they're intimidated, experienced agents, they try to flex their experience on a newer agent, and it's just a wrong approach. And unfortunately, especially over the past year, agents are calling the listing agent, but they're asking the wrong questions. They're asking, is your seller offering a co-broke? How much? And that's just like putting a hand up, and most people don't want to work with that, right? So let's role play a little bit, Trish, on this phone call. The types of
boy.
list here, right? So you pretend to be the listing agent, and I'm going to call you on your listing.
All right.
Bling. Answer the phone.
Hi,
Trish.
this is Trish from Miranda Real Estate Group.
Hey, Trish, Brian Miranda from Miranda Real Estate Group as well. Just wanted to reach out to you and act like I've never known you before, but just want to say congratulations on your listing. It's a great property. I have a few buyers that are, probably could be interested in it. I do have one buyer I am showing it to, but before I do it, or before we submit an offer, one of the things I like to find out on behalf of my client to see if there's a deal here to be made is what's really important to your sellers. If you could elaborate even just a little bit and share, maybe I can relay that information and we can get an offer that works and we could work together, because I'd love to work with you. I don't know if it's a dollar amount as a hot button for them. Maybe there's timing, something unique with the property that they're worried about, et cetera, et cetera. Anything that you can give me as a clue, I would be more than happy to share that with my client and try to come up with a win-win offer. Win-win, meaning something good for them, something good for them, so we can move forward. And then I shut up.
Yeah.
What's going to happen in my experience, Trish, is more agents are going to talk to a friendly person than someone that's coming off aggressive or pushy or asking the wrong questions. When you're friendly and you use an approach like that, I don't want to say they're going to violate their fiduciary responsibility intentionally, but evidently a lot of agents will violate their fiduciary responsibility because they give up too much information. And we're in a contact sport. This is negotiations. We get hired to do what we call a high dollar activity, is negotiating. And a good negotiator will try to find weak spots on the other end that will benefit their client, right? So I shut up and I listen. And I've heard things that you wouldn't believe through the years. I'm sure you have too, because you've been on the other side of these conversations, where the listing agent will say, "Hey, Brian, hey, thanks for calling. Yeah, you know what? Dollar amount's not really important to them. They're building a house, and if someone's willing to wait 6 months to close, I think that would go a long way." So what did I hear? They just want an
Below,
offer.
you're gonna, yep,
You know, the
flexibility
dollar
with
amount,
closing, but
maybe I go high, maybe I don't have to because they're already showing a weakness, right? Anything
right.
that you want to elaborate on that role play?
No, I would just say, like, typically I say, you know, if my seller, like I have a listing right now where he really needs flexibility with relocating. So the closing, flexibility with closing is very important to him.
Yeah, and if someone presented an offer that allowed that seller to have that flexibility, that would probably move it to the front of the pack or one of the top offers that they would
Right.
consider because that agent took the time to find that information out. That information there that you just mentioned to me, I won't find that on an MLS printout. Would you
No.
agree? Right? If I look at the flyer, marketing flyer for the property, it doesn't say that. You really have to pick up the phone to have that conversation. And unfortunately, and I'm talking to a lot of you younger agents out there, younger generation agents, there's a phobia of picking up the phone and making a phone call. Don't shoot a text, have a nice conversation. That's how we used to do it the old way. You're going to get more done with a conversation over the phone or
Definitely.
even face to face if you run into that individual somewhere and you're talking about their listing versus just shooting a text or being afraid to ask key questions. So again, number one, we're spending a little bit more time on it, but pick up the phone, call the listing agent, play nice, tell them that you're excited to work with them, you're looking for information that's important to their client that you could share with your client, and hopefully you could find that win-win agreement to move forward. All right, let's take number two. Use an escalation clause with a higher step-up amount. By now, every realtor should know what an escalation clause is. Trish, I remember when we were in a seller's market, no, a buyer's market, sorry, get reversed, that escalation clause weren't used that much. And when you said the word escalation clause, people looked at you like you had three heads. They didn't know what you were talking about. They still are confused as how they work, but everyone knows what an escalation clause is. And if you don't, you really should Google it, look it up, watch some videos on YouTube. Because it is a tool that is used in pretty much every multiple offer situation.
Right.
And you want to be able to share that with your client who doesn't know what an escalation clause is, as, hey, here's something that we can use as a tool to help your offer stand out. There is a tool that we use, a form that we could fill out called an escalation clause. What's that? Trish, you want to explain what an escalation clause is?
Sure. It's it's where you're willing to, you know, your buyer is offering a certain amount and they are willing to go over the highest offer up to a cap. So if they're offering maybe $300,000, maybe the buyer is willing to do $2,500 over the highest offer up to $325 if that's their cap. So it allows the buyer to strengthen their offer while also not overpaying for the property.
Boom. I like that definition. It allows the buyer to strengthen their offer or be more competitive without overpaying. So let's say the highest offer that they got in that scenario was 305. Well, guess what? Your buyer just bought it for, if the step up is $2,000, 307, right?
Yep.
So they didn't have to go in and offer 310 and overpay. 307 got the job done. It makes their offer stand out. Now, I'm going to touch on this a little bit because I see a lot of this going on, a lot of confusion. A couple things around escalation clauses that we're seeing in the market that is confusing. Agents don't know how to explain them properly to their clients. And I'm talking sellers as well. So sellers see the cap. Like say they're willing to go to 325. Sellers see the cap and they think that that offers for 325, but it's not. If you have competing escalation clauses, it gets confusing. Okay, and you have some agents on the list side trying to do an escalation over the cap. It's what the net is to the seller. You'll step up that dollar amount above what the net is to the seller in the prior contract. So they can be confusing. You want to be careful. I think escalation clauses are a great tool if you're in competition with one or two people. But if you're in a multiple offer situation where there's 10, 15, 20 offers and all competing against each other, you don't want to get into this war where you have competing escalation clauses. You might need to pick up the phone and have a conversation with that listing agent again and says, hey, if you have other escalation clauses, do you mind if we just come hard and come strong and put that final number in there that your buyer is comfortable with?
Mhm.
Because sometimes they just toss the escalation clauses out because agents don't know how to explain what the true number is to the seller. You want to elaborate on that, Trish? I know you want to
No,
say.
and no, I agree with you. I think like what you said, when you have 8, 9, 10 or more offers on a property and, 5 of them are using escalation, it can become very difficult. But I definitely think it's a great tool as a buyer that will really strengthen and set your offer apart, but it allows you not to overpay. We've seen on the list side where, there's multiple offers and people come in at this outrageous amount and they could have, it's great for our sellers.
Right.
Great for our sellers. We're helping our sellers, not the most amount. But as a buyer, if you're putting your buyer hat on and looking at it, you're like, why didn't you use an escalation clause? So it's just, because then they wouldn't have overpaid so much. But
So I'm going to go on the listing side and give you guys a tip on the listing side. If you are representing a seller and you get a buyer agent that calls you and says, I see best and final is tomorrow at 12, Trish, how many offers do you have? What do you say?
I say we have multiple offers, more than one in hand.
Exactly. You don't want to say you have 1 or 2 or 3
No.
offers, because then that makes the other side and the buyers think that, well, I really don't have to go that much higher because there's not that much competition, right? Remember, on the list side, I'm talking about, you have a fiduciary responsibility to that seller. You should just say, we have more than 1 offer in hand, as you said, and you mentioned there. Put your best foot forward, best and final by 12 o'clock at noon. But if you are representing a seller and you see multiple competing escalation clauses, what I like to do is I like to pick up the phone and call each agent back and let them know that, hey, there's multiple escalations here. It would behoove you. You don't have to. You work for your client. I work for my client. But it would behoove you to do your best and final minus that. So that's something that I would probably do as a listing agent. Now with your buyer agent cap on, this is a buyer call. Keep that escalation intact there. Do whatever is going to make your offer stand out. If you feel it's competitive, and do it. So, but at a minimum, you should understand what an escalation clause is and how to explain it to your client. All right, so I actually got a complaint. Well, I'll let you elaborate on this one and I'll follow up with it. Go ahead, Trish.
Okay. Consider a larger escrow deposit. Typically, we see anywhere between 1 to 3% of the purchase price as the deposit. But definitely, you can see if you have a $3,000 escrow deposit versus a $10,000, it shows that the buyer has a lot more skin in the game. You're more serious about the property, and I know sellers really appreciate that.
Yeah. And that is something, like, to your point, sellers see it. It makes the offer stand out. It makes the offer look more competitive when you increase the good faith deposit. Down payment is also going to show, but when you increase the good faith deposit. I actually got a complaint to the office from a first-time home buyer that didn't understand why their agent told them that in order to make your offer stand out, you should consider putting more than just a 1% down, right? So for example, I think they were put $3,000 down. If you could bump that up to 5,000 or more, that's going to go a long way to make your offer stand out. And first time home buyer had a hard time understanding it. So make sure that you guys, I always say this is Trish could tell you this, I say it in all of our training. We live and breathe this stuff, so we see it every day. We know it makes common sense to us, but don't assume that the buyer, especially first time home buyers, understand the strategy behind it. So when you're talking to them, let them know that this is a strategy that we've seen be successful before to help your offer stand out, having a larger good faith deposit. So don't just say, hey, we're going to give you a larger good, we're going to put a larger good faith deposit in there. Explain why. To Trish's point, it makes the buyer more committed to the transaction and the seller feel a little bit more comfortable that this person has a lot more to walk away from than just 1%. Consider no inspections or raising the threshold from $2,000 to a higher amount. So keyword is consider. I would never recommend that you waive your inspection. This is what I tell every client. I would never recommend that you waive your inspection, but you have to consider it because your competition potentially will waive inspections. And I don't want to see me have to tell you that we lost the offer to someone that waived the inspection. I want you to know that you have the option to do it. I can't personally recommend it, but it is an option for you to consider. So when I say the word consider, it's because I'm presenting them with the option. I'm not recommending. The big difference between the two. The other thing that they can do is raise the threshold. Right now, our contracts here in the Capital District show a standard $2,000 amount. That's any single item that's going to be $2,000 to replace or repair. The buyer, if they have a New York State certified inspector come and do the inspection, they flag it as what's categorized as a major, that buyer can walk away from the deal should they not come to terms with the seller. Now, you can say to the seller, hey, we're pretty comfortable with the house. We're really just worried about anything major like a furnace or a roof. So we're going to raise that threshold from $2,000 to $7,000. Right?
Yep.
That makes the seller feel like, okay, great. They're not going to go around the house and try to nickel dime me and renegotiate the deal. So these are things that you can consider. You don't have to do it, but you have the option to do it. I'm not going to recommend that you waive your inspections or that you raise to a certain amount, but I'm telling you that your competition more than likely will. So that's how you want to phrase it. Anything I missed on that point, Trish?
No, but Brian, I have been seeing agents who, if their buyers have been missing out, what they'll do is they'll schedule a second showing and let the listing agent know that they're going to have a inspector come along with them, just so that he or she can just see anything that kind of sticks out to them. And they've been able to waive inspections after that. They feel a little bit more comfortable. So that's also an option as well. The buyer does have to pay the inspector, but it is a smaller fee than like a regular home inspection, which is also an option.
Great point, Trish. So let me elaborate what I heard you say for the audience. So if a buyer goes to a property and they see a property they like, they know it's going to be in a multiple offer situation. You could schedule a second showing, hopefully within the same 24 hours. If you could find an inspector that has the availability, a lot of inspectors are aware of the market that we're in. So what they'll offer to do is they'll come and do a condensed version of their inspection. They're not going to do a full-fledged inspection. You're not going to get into most homes for 2 hours on a showing. But if you have a half hour, 45 minutes, the inspector can walk through that home with the buyer and cover enough ground that the buyer can consider now whether or not they want to waive the inspections because they had their inspector go with them on the showing. So that's something that you could suggest. Why don't you have an inspector, if you can get a hold of an inspector, go through the property with you prior to making the offer, and then you can determine based on that information whether or not you want to raise the threshold or waive it all together. I can't recommend it, but I can definitely recommend that you go through an inspector. So I think that's a great point that you raised, Trish. And when you raise that to your clients and to your buyers, especially if we're working on other deals and sell through other potential deals, that's going to make you stand out. People like they're going to say, no one ever suggested that to me before.
Right.
Go ahead, take this one, Trish.
Right. Number 5 is must have an updated pre-approval that shows a recent date, dollar amount, and financing term that matches what is on your client's offer. So it's very important to get an updated pre-approval. We've seen on the listing side where buyers agents have submitted offers with 3, 4, 6 month pre-approvals or pre-qualification letters. And it's just with rates changing, you just want to make sure that the buyer can still afford what they're offering.
I would elaborate on that and say we should be doing this as buyer agents, but I'm going to also warn you, if you're a listing agent, to look at this. Trish and I, you and I just had this conversation. Read those pre-approval letters, not only for those reasons to make sure that it's up to date and it matches what's on the offer, but there's other things there, especially with sellers' concessions. You guys all know, hopefully you know, that on certain loan products, you cannot do more than a 6% seller concession. On conventional financing, you cannot do more than 3% seller concession. And I had Trish chuckling because I was basically saying that I saw an offer with a huge concession amount. And I said, the math's not mathing, right? So what's that mean? That means if I have my buyer structure an offer on a concession and I'm not reading the pre-approval letter that in the terms that the lender is pre-approving them on, and we're just writing some arbitrary number on the contract to win the deal, it's going to come back, right? It's going to get kicked back, and unfortunately, it's going to get kicked back a few weeks down the road, and they're going to say, well, you told us to write it this way, right? So read the pre-approval letters, pick up the phone if you have to, call the lender, confirm we're thinking about writing the amount for this with this much in concession. Will that work with this loan product, right? They might tell you, no, you can't use that much of a concession. You can only use this much. But if you're on the flip side of the transaction, if you're representing the seller and you have multiple offers in front of you, one looks too good to be true and there's concessions involved in there, do the math, make sure the math works. If it doesn't, pick up the phone, call the lender, on the pre-approval letter, every lender puts their name, phone number, contact information, saying, if you have any questions, contact me. Pick up the phone, contact them. We've been able to discover a lot of things by making that phone call when we represent the seller, but you should be doing it as well too with your buyer. Just checking with, hey, we're getting ready to submit an offer on behalf of our clients here, and I see their pre-approval that you sent them. I just want to confirm, will this work? Okay. It's always a good practice to do that. That's number 6, right? Use a local or well-known lender. Why is this important? It gives the other agent confidence to share with the seller that I've worked with this lender before. They have a history of getting loans done and getting to the closing table, or I never heard of this bank before. And this one here is a few $1,000s less, but they are working with a local lender where if there's a decision that needs to be made, we can get a quick response back. It does go a long way. Trish, why don't you elaborate? I know we were also talking about this earlier about some lenders, a good job that they do with video.
Yes, so working with a well-known lender or a local lender, there are different lenders out there who will provide an additional service of recording a video to send to the listing agent to help strengthen their buyer's offer. So I have worked with other lenders in the past who have done videos, and they've talked about the benefit of a VA loan or an FHA loan or conventional loan, and why this person is very well qualified and why this offer is very strong, and how they can make the process seamless, but it's coming from the lender. And that lender is sending the video to the listing agent on behalf of their buyer. And it's given the listing agent a very good feeling about the transaction, especially if they don't know the lender or have worked with them, and also about the offer that's coming through. So I know that's gone a long way.
All right, great. I'm going to pause for a second here, Trish. Just look at some of the questions as we were going on. Going back to the escrow, in New York, is escrow deposit refundable if the buyer backs out? In North Carolina, where this person is from, we have a non-refundable due diligence deposit in addition to earnest money deposit. Do you want to take that? You want me to take a stab at it?
I missed part of it, Bri, like the.
All right, so basically, I'll answer it. The question was, in New York, are the escrow deposits refundable if the buyer backs out? So in New York, our brokerage typically holds the escrow money. The broker can only release that money under 3 circumstances, and I'll go through them really quick. Let's say it's a $10,000 good faith deposit, earnest money deposit, and there's a closing. That deposit will get applied to the closing. So that's one. The second one is, let's say there is an inspection issue, or we have an attorney approval and the attorney disapproves of it, or there's a mortgage contingency that's not met, meaning the buyer doesn't get approved for the mortgage for appraisal or whatever reason. 2 parties agree to that when they sign the contract. In order to get out of the contract, the 2 parties have to sign what's called a cancellation release that would say this money is going to go back to the buyer, or a portion of it's going to go to the seller, a portion of it's going to go to the buyer, but they have to agree on it. The broker cannot release that good faith deposit unless they have a fully executed, meaning signed by both parties, cancellation release that allows that. Okay, so that's number 2. The third way that money can be released, the good faith deposit from the broker, is if one party says, I'm not going to sign that cancellation release. You know, they're trying to get out of this contract. It's bogus. I feel I deserve that money. They can call us and email us till they're blue in the face saying, that's my money. I deserve it. Send it to me. They can have their attorney sending threatening letters that this, you know, the other person didn't perform on the agreement. It's not for us to decide that. If they take that person to court and they get a judgment from a court, and a lot of these can be done in small claims court, depending on the dollar amount, if it's under $5,000, I believe. But if it's a higher amount, they could still take them to court. And if the court decides this person gets the money and we have a judgment from a court, then we can release it. So hopefully that answers that question. What happens to that earnest money deposit? In New York State, that's how it's handled. So hopefully that answered the question. Let's see. I think that was the only question we had so far. So great question. Let me cross those out. That was answered. So back to the document here, Trish, can you see this? So we're talking
I
about using
can,
a
yep.
local lender and adding the property address to the pre-approval. Sounds basic, but it shows the seller that you're pre-approved, not just for in general, you're pre-approved for that specific property. And I think what the mistake I see some buyers and some lenders do, some buyer agents do, is they put, they're trying to put in a $325,000 offer, but they show a pre-approval letter that they're pre-approved to $400,000. What's that automatically tell the seller? It tells the sellers that you can go
Showing the cards that you can go up.
Right? So if you send a pre-approval letter, it says, hey, we're pre-approved for this property.
Yep.
You don't have to put the dollar amount, the ceiling that you're pre-approved. You just put the dollar amount of the contract and that address, meaning we're pre-approved for this address at this price of the contract that we're offering. Let's say the property's listed for 300, but you're offering 325. Our client is pre-approved for 325 for 123 Main Street. That's the way to go versus a general blanket pre-approval that shows a higher amount. Okay, and then we also talked about this one, right? And we'll get into some more of these examples and details here. But have your clients write a personal letter that is compliant and does not violate fair housing rules, AKA love letters, right? And one of the things I had Trish do when we were talking about this call is she said, hey, I have a great sample of a personal letter, love letter that I used or that we used. And now with the addition of AI, you can use AI. You guys all use when you send out an email, most of you use a spell checker to check to make sure spelling and grammar is correct. Well, you can use AI, upload your client's letter, make sure that they typed it out, not you. You could upload your client's letter into ChatGPT or Gemini. We'll do an example here. I'm just giving you a high overview here. But you could ask it to please review it for any fair housing violations, and also please review it for any suggestions that'll help appeal to the seller, or you could prompt it, whatever, but that's the basic gist of it. But the controversy of personal letters are illegal, you can't use them. That is true if they include things that are fair housing violations, like photos of the kids, photos of the family. That's the common ones that we see mostly in there. But if you start talking about even marital status in the letter, me and my wife are so excited when we saw this house, violation, right? You could say, me and Allison are so excited, right? Because we're two different, but I'm not saying whether we're married, we're divorced, we're separated, we're brothers, we're sisters, you don't know, right? So things like that, AI can help filter it out. But you should go through training on fair housing, and anything that's a protected class right there. If you're reviewing the letters on behalf of your client, just suggest that they talk about pride of ownership. House looks amazing. We're in love with what you've done with the flooring, you know, the pride of ownership shows throughout. We love the area, the neighborhood. We could see ourselves going on walks in this particular area. So you could talk about the area. You could also talk about their purchase power strength, right?
Yeah.
I've been employed as a realtor in my career for over 20 years, making, you know, I'm very qualified and good credit, as you can see per my pre-approval. So we should have no problem outside of the appraisal moving forward towards a closing, things like that. You don't want to talk about, you know, we could see ourselves celebrating Christmas here, right? Christmas is a holiday that ties to religion, and it's a protected class. Those are those types of things are violations. So we can go on and on and on and do a whole class just on personal letters. But the main thing I want you guys to take away from this is they are effective if they appeal to the seller's emotions, and they are legal as long as they don't provide fair housing rules. So Trish, that was our notes. I know that we can go into some of these examples, and then also you're going to share in your example. Anything before I close out on here? I don't see if I see any more questions here.
I don't think so, Bri. I didn't know if you wanted me to bring up the like the ChatGPT of the personal letter.
Yeah, why don't you start with that since it's fresh, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and you could share your screen and show an example of a personal letter, and also how you use AI to review it.
Do you mind just making me the presenter?
No problem. Let's see here. Boom. There you go.
Can you see my screen or no? Oh,
yep. See the family. I see your desktop.
Oh, you see the family. Okay, hold on one sec.
beautiful family,
Thank
which
you.
we'll give Patricia a shout. They just celebrated 9 years
Yes,
of
we
wedding
did. Thank
bliss.
you. Can you see it now, Bri?
Yes.
Okay. So what I did, let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger there. Okay. So what I did is I took the personal letter and I just wrote into Chat GPT here. I said, screen my personal letter for fair housing violations for real estate. All I did is I copied the letter from my buyers right here.
Mhm.
Okay. And I put it in there. And what came out is it says, your letter is well written and warm, and I can confirm that it's generally compliant with fair housing regulation. But let's go over the details further. So it kind of gives you some more information. It says what's safe and appropriate, and it tells you the letter focuses on the property itself, the features, the layout, the view, your appreciation for the home's craftsmanship, respect for the seller and their home, a commitment to care for the property. Okay, and then it says all of these neutral and property focused, all of those are neutral and property focused, which keeps you within the fair housing guidelines. But I love this because it does tell you areas to be cautious about, which is great. So it says there are no explicit violations in your letter, but here are some best practices. Avoid any mention of family status, religion, or personal identity. And it says you didn't include any, which is great. But it just gives you kind of like tips. Avoid, like, continue avoiding language like we can see our children playing in the yard, or it's quiet for our retirement, or the perfect place for family gatherings, or referencing a religious holiday. So that I love that it like gives you that feedback and then also gives you tips to make it better. And then it just kind of goes through the tone of the home. And it just takes every line basically that you say to give you feedback. But
Now let's talk
this
about
is,
several uses for you guys on this. So
and it
long
generated
story
another
short,
one.
we had an AI call on this in this master class. We did it a few, you know, you can go back on our blueprint page. I think it was June 18th or so, where I interviewed Brett Johnson. He went through AI and using AI. So you're going to see this more and more often. There's going to be two types of people in this world, those who embrace it and those who don't. Something like this is very simple. You don't have to be advanced rocket science to learn how to do this, but it's a great tool for several reasons. Why? Because you could share it with your buyer, because a lot of times buyers will say, hey, can you send this letter over? And then when you tell them it's a violation, like they're hearing it from you. Now it's like it causes friction or tension between you and the buyer, right? So you can just, even if you're in the same room with them, pull that up on the screen and show them these are the things that we want to include. These are the things we want to be cautious about, like it says. Or you can just cut and paste and send it to your buyer and say, please rewrite the letter with this in mind. This is coming right from what the rules are, right? But then you could also take that information that Trish displayed here in that process that she went through. If you have that listing agent on the other side that's just nervous about presenting your letter, you could say, listen, we ran it through this check. This was the feedback. I encourage you to run it through the same check on your end and share this with your sellers so that hopefully that gets through. But I think that so many agents are so quick to say, nope, can't do it. They're illegal. We're not looking at them. We're not using it. So this will hopefully, using AI as a tool, will help that with that conversation.
Definitely.
So let me see what else that you sent me over here in my goodie bag that we could elaborate on. I know that.
And Bri, I just
Go
wanted to say too, like if you set that expectation with your buyer for the letter, like you feel that this is going to set you apart and you explain the violations and what we can't mention, a lot of buyers are very receptive. And after reviewing it and having a conversation with them, they want to set their offer apart too. So they're
Right.
willing to review it with you and everything, which is great.
Yeah, and unfortunately, sometimes if they persist on something like that, you know, a letter that's wrong, or they, no, I want to leave the pictures of my kids in there, whatever, potentially that listing agent won't show their offer,
Right.
no matter what the dollar amount is. So we want to make sure that we're including the information. Trish, why don't we go over the checklist really quick? It's going to echo a lot of the stuff that we just talked about. So we'll go through rapid fire, but we do have a tool. We have a checklist. Let's see if I could share the screen again. Switch screens right there. Do you see the checklist here? I'll zoom
I
in
do.
on. Okay, so again, this is a document that I could share with a buyer. Are you frustrated? Are you this? You can do a video with this. You don't have to show this in your video, but show that you have like a flash of it. Are you frustrated losing out on homes? Are you trying to find a house and you just can't with the inventory? Well, I have a plan. Let's talk. Reach out to me so that we can schedule a 15-minute consultation so I can share my plan for submitting strong offers. Does that set you apart?
Yeah.
Going back to the appointment, one other thing I wanted to pull up while we have this up on the screen here. Let me see if I can find this. Do you see the stats here?
Yeah, I can. Yep.
One of the things I recommend is two things. I recommend that you're educating it. First part of submitting a strong offer is to make sure your buyer understands what a strong offer looks like, right? So what you have to do is right away find out who the decision makers are, meaning not only just them, is there someone, decision makers and influencers, is there someone who's, and I talked about this last week and I'll repeat it here, before submitting a strong offer, you saw the property or we're going to see a property, okay? Is there someone other than yourself who's purchasing the property? And is there someone else who I would love to get their nod of approval and feel comfortable before submitting an offer, right? Like a parent, someone that's assisting with a deposit, right? Or, you know, maybe you have a business partner that says, I'm going to give you X amount of dollars to help you with your down payment, okay? Someone that's going to influence that person's decision or someone whose opinion that person respects in order to make a decision. If they identify a person, even if it's a person not buying the house, I would recommend that you try to get that person along on the showings with you, or at least in this appointment to have a conversation about what's going on in that market right now. Because if you have a buyer that is in a multiple offer situation and you're trying to tell them they have to increase their, you know, threshold and you have to do these different things, and then they go back to someone that influences their decision, and that person hasn't bought a house in 8 years, right? Before they're going to say, that's nuts, that's crazy, I never had to do that before. You should be able to go in 10,000 under asking price, right? They don't realize that the inventory is low, it's competitive. So take in order to submit a strong offer, this isn't on our list, this is something new. Take the time to educate them what a strong offer looks like in today's market, right? So if you go to stats, this happens to be from the Capital District. This is available from our MLS. We can see the stats. What I like to focus in on when I have that conversation is that most offers in our market right now are still going in at asking price, or here now just slightly above, but they're still going in at asking price. So if you have that buyer that says, I want to go 10, 15, $20,000, the house has only been on the market for 2 days, it's in a multiple offer situation, I want to go in below asking price, you got to show them what original list price received, what the sellers are getting on average. On average, they're getting asking price. And really that number should be a lot higher, but sellers are overpricing their house. So they're taking a little bit less than what they're pricing it at. But if you're in a competitive situation, I can guarantee, and I can pull up other markets to demonstrate that the sellers on average are getting way above their asking price. So that's first and foremost. If they have the influence in this and they see it, that's going to go a long way. The other thing that you want to share with them is my favorite screen. Past 20 years, the inventory of homes for sale, because there's a good chance that the person that's influencing them, or maybe it's their mindset, the last time they bought or sold their house, is somewhere in here when the inventory in this market was a lot higher. There was a lot more options. You had a lot more flexibility. Well, since 2022 or so, it's been very competitive, and we've been in a multiple offer situation. As you can see where we currently stand, we're still in a low inventory, which means that supply and demand is still strong because supply is low. That means that we have to make a strong offer. Okay, so I'm showing you, if you're looking in this particular area, on average, you could pull MLS data to show here's a house that was listed for 300. You're putting an offer in on one down the street. This one sold for 25,000 over the ask price, meaning we're not going to get it for $15,000, $20,000 under the ask price. So you have to educate them by showing them stats like this, and also pulling up listings that are similar to that property and that show that they did go for higher amounts than what this person's offering. Because a buyer can become their worst obstacle in writing a strong offer. So first and foremost, you can go through these 8 steps and all these things that we're showing you right now, but if their mindset or the person that's influencing them isn't in line with what's going on in the market, you're going to have a problem. Anything you want to elaborate on that, Trish? Does that make sense?
No, I think you said that perfectly. The data shows, like, that's what's so helpful with showing, you know, the G-Car stats and everything. And I'm sure anybody who has, you know, their local board has some type of stats that they can use if it's not G-Car.
Right. So let's go back to, where was this checklist that I had? Submitting a strong offer. So I'll hit on some of these, Trish, and I'll have you hit on some of these. So
Yeah.
we talked about when you write a strong offer, pull the full agent report, property listing, put it on the top, report on Flex. It shows that you have all the information.
Mhm.
Then I would include a love letter. Again, we beat that up pretty good. What should consist in that love letter. An escalation addendum, if you need it, you put that in there and explain. We'll explain later on in the summary. The contract, make sure that you have the fully executed contract, as well as any of the disclosures that we're going to list below. There's nothing worse, Trish, than incomplete forms, or don't try to submit your offer verbally. You know, for them to take it serious, it has to be in writing. Verbal is just hearsay. And I know there's a lot of agents out there that just, you know, let me just find out if they're even going to take this offer.
If it's even worth it.
If it's even worth it. I mean, if it comes up in conversation, you should know whether the sellers are what they're looking for. That's why we recommend doing that phone call, whether you're wasting your time writing it or not. If in that conversation you get critical information that says the seller owes X amount of dollars, or they're hell bent on getting this much, they're not going to budge, you could share that information with your buyer. If your buyer's still insisting on going lower, we work for them. We have to do what the buyer says, but it's pretty much, you know, I would still recommend writing the offer if you want it to even be considered or taken serious. Don't try to get away with a verbal. Disclosures, make sure they're filled out correctly. Especially if it's an in-house situation. We've seen that sometimes the disclosures have to be modified or changed. Property condition disclosure, that your buyer has taken the time to read it, ask any key questions, but make sure it's included. So Trish, I'm talking about the contract all the way to all the disclosures, making sure they're filled out and complete. Why don't you take it from school taxes down?
Sure. So school taxes, property taxes, I like to include that as well, because once you get a fully executed offer, if it is accepted and signed, you can just forward that all over to the attorney and the lender. The pre-approval, pre-qualification letter or proof of funds, make sure letters are dated and current. So I always include that. Don't forget about the FHA or VA disclosure if applicable. A copy of the deposit check to accompany the offer. And I like to email the listing agent with one PDF. It's one PDF. We've received offers that are piecemealed and there's 6 different attachments, and it's very hard to like present that to your seller. And then it also makes you sort of wonder like what the transaction is going to be like, because if it's so all over the place receiving the offer, sometimes on the list side, you wonder, is that how the transaction is going to go? But if you have a one PDF, one packet, it's really clean, everything's initialed and signed. What I do is I attach it to the listing agent, and then I put, you know, hi to them, attaches the offer from our buyers for 123 Main Street in, you know, in Glenville. The buyers have written a love letter for your seller, provided proof of funds, and have a copy of the deposit check. Please see below for the details of the offer. I try to make it as easy as possible for them, so that the listing agent can see just high level, what was the purchase price, the deposit, what's the financing, the inspections, if you're doing any, attorney approval date, closing date, other notes, if they have nothing to sell, or if it is contingent on them selling their home, if they can be flexible, anything that can just high level, basically summarize the offer into just a small paragraph for them in the email. I always say, please confirm receipt and let me know if you have any questions. We look forward to working with you, Willie and Trish. And then I always call or text the agent after I've sent the offer to ensure that it's been received. Because there's been times my offer has been in their spam, or they haven't received it because of something with the not internet, but basically like some emails are blocked and some aren't.
Right.
Yeah.
Or there might be a link in your signature that prevents it from going through. So in summary, you want to use this checklist to check box that you include all this into one file. Yes. You're going to attach it to an email, and she's pretty much given us the template. We cut and paste this right here into an email that summarizes all the highlights of that contract so that the listing agent can make it easy to explain that to their seller. A lot of the listing agents will just forward it to the seller review, and that'll make it simple. We see agents, Trish, all the time. It's frustrating, right? They're sending an email for each document, each page, each file. It's like separate. They want us to like put it all together, and it causes a lot of extra work. And you don't want to cause a lot of extra work and frustration for that listing agent.
And then you wonder too, like when they are doing it, or like they're like, oh yeah, here's 6 attachments. Then they're like, here's my updated pre-approval. You wonder if you're missing something, because they're sending so many different documents. Where try and make it as easy as possible for the listing agent, because that's setting the tone for the whole transaction.
Right. So we're showing that. So the one thing I would add to this is where we say here, if you are using a love letter here, also in your email, put that there in parentheses. And I think proof of funds, the buyers have written a love letter. In parentheses, that would be that has been screened for fair housing violations.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Just to let them know that. That's what I usually do, just to let them know before they even say it's illegal. It's, hey, we've already screened it. We know that it is. If you want to elaborate on the phone, pick up the phone and have a conversation with them. Not only did we have it checked out, we also ran it through AI, and these were some suggestions. I'm more than happy to forward that information to you so that you could share that as well with your seller. We want to make it simple for them to pass along to the seller so that they would want to work with us, because hey, this is very thorough, it's very clean, it's very neat, and we've seen testimonials from agents, she might even be on this call, where the offer wasn't the highest, but because it was presented in this fashion, where everything was in order, it was simple and explained, that they went with that offer because they felt more comfortable that had a better chance of getting across the finish line versus someone that the math wasn't mathing, they were sending a piecemeal, it was confusing, they felt like they were missing something, it was hard to explain what was going on to the seller. This just makes it simple.
And I think too, Brian, like we've been on the other end of it as a buyer's agent, where our buyer didn't get the offer received, but the agent said, unfortunately, the seller decided to pick another offer. However, they really appreciate, or the listing agent really appreciate how neat and organized the offer was, how detailed the email was. And it just goes to show you're still developing those, even though you didn't get it accepted, you're connecting and developing those relationships with those agents in your industry who you never know when you're going to be working with again or doing a transaction with. So
the last thing that I'll pull up here, and hopefully forgive me here, I want to try to
we might have to do it high level here.
I'm going to do this high level and quick. We're going to land this
this will be on the Facebook page though.
I don't know why this isn't collapsing. Sharing, here we go. Screen.
We kind of touched upon it. It's just a document that shows the 10 different strategies.
So this is a document that touches on everything that we did, but you should have it in your folder when you meet with a buyer for the first time, something that they can walk away with the conversation. I usually run through each of these boxes with the buyer, but I use this as a tool to explain what we talked about with inspections, escalation clauses, contingency times, down payment, and so on. This again will set you apart, okay? So that's it. We're not going to read through this whole document because it echoes what we've talked about on this call. But you want to be able to set yourself apart using this form or the checklist. Start off with answering that question. Why should I use you? I have a plan. Let me show you my plan. When can we get together? And when can we write a strong offer that's going to hopefully help you get to the house of your dreams? Highlighter drop, Trish. What do you think?
It was perfect.
All right, guys. So that's it. We'll wrap it up for this week. Trish, thank you. We will be back here. Who do we have lined up for the 22nd? Is this a secret?
We have Ryan Go Cool. I am very excited about this.
Who's it?
It's Ryan Go Cool.
Ryan Go Cool, who's had a lot of experience in a short period of time. He was our rookie of the year last year. He works with a lot of buyers, so that should be a good call as well. So we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Thanks, Trish.
Thank you. Bye.